We've got 6 states still to be called. 5 of them key battleground states: Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada and North Carolina. Alaska has only counted about half their votes, but that's going to fall Republican. There's only 3 electoral college votes there. But there's no doubt at all that Joe Biden is by far the favourite. Donald Trump, of course, has been calling foul. Well, let's have a little listen to what we've heard overnight from Donald Trump speaking from the White House.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. If you count the votes that came in late, we're looking at them very strongly, but a lot of votes came in late.
Well, a sharp contrast to what Joe Biden, the Democratic candidate, had to say himself.
We continue to feel very good about where things stand. We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will be declared the winners. So I ask everyone to stay calm. The process is working.
Well, that's what the two men had to say who were at the centre of this storm. And let's find out what my next guest has to say. Brian Klass is an Associate Professor of Global Politics at University College London. He's also author of numerous books on American politics, including The Despot's Apprentice and new book, How to Rig an Election. What an appropriate title for a book, Brian. What do you make of what's been going on in the American elections since the polls closed on Tuesday night?
Well, I think there's 2 issues here. One is that we are about to know the winner. I would say today, it's going to be Friday probably, that we'll have a declared victory for Joe Biden. And that's going to be because Pennsylvania will almost certainly go into his column, and that puts him over the threshold of 270 electoral votes. He'll probably have some icing on the cake with Nevada, Georgia, and Arizona, but those will be narrow leads. They're going to be small leads. And the question then becomes what we make of what Trump said last night. And I think we have to be very clear that he was lying about that. You know, I study rigged elections professionally, and the U.S. election was not rigged, and the vote counting is extremely transparent. You can literally look at a live stream of people counting ballots, and in many states there are Democrats and Republicans who open every ballot together and then agree that that's the count. So what he said was a lie. It was dangerous. It was authoritarian. It could lead to violence. But we have to be very, very clear that what he said was not true.
And this is it. An awful lot of the things that are doing the rounds are all these stories on the internet about this claim and that claim about dumps of 100% of postal ballot votes for Donald Trump and the like. This stuff is easily disprovable, is quite clearly simply not true, and yet it is being shared, and his supporters are lapping it up. What's interesting, though, is perhaps it's not being lapped up so much by the Republican mainstream of the party, and interestingly, it would appear not so much by Fox News, previously his big cheerleaders.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Fox News has had a very, very partisan primetime lineup of its shows, but its actual decision desk and pollsters are not partisan. And they're, because their reputation hinges on getting these things as right as they can. And of course, the polls had a series of problems, but Fox News is trying to call this as best they can. And in fact, they may end up being the first ones to call the victory for Biden today. It's possible. But I think you're right to point out that there is a split in the Republican Party where people see the writing on the wall and they understand that the Trump era is ending. But there's also the sort of part of the party, the core base, that will not go down without a fight, regardless of whether they think they've lost the election. And that's why this next 3 months is going to be very dangerous, in my view. I'm really worried about the period from now until January 20th, when the next president is sworn in.
And I mean,
because there is a risk of violence.
Indeed. I mean, Bernie Sanders, was the Democratic bid for the candidacy, and he months ago on television, we saw the clip online. He predicted, exactly what the playbook would be for Donald Trump on this. And it was always to be expected. He's a very sore loser. He had no intention of leaving, and a lot of people have been predicting, that he won't leave office. That is the big concern, that he actually physically will not take part in the smooth transition of power. And we've seen this every single time. We see all the other past presidents, even on the opposite sides of the dividing line on their politics. They've actually become quite good friends because they know that they're the only other men, and so far, who've actually ever been in the position of being the most powerful person in the world and having to make some very tough decisions. But there is still the possibility that he will attempt to stay in the White House, and he has got supporters, many of them frankly with an awful lot of guns, who will back him in this. What are your fears on that front?
Yeah, so you're totally right that this was predictable. I wrote a column in the Washington Post in early May saying that Donald Trump is going to reject the election results and what that will mean. And that's happening right now. I mean, he's already saying that he's disputing the results despite overwhelming evidence that they're real. In terms of violence, the real risk is that somebody in his base takes up the mantle, as you say, with their guns. And in fact, there was a story out of Philadelphia literally about an hour ago that police have foiled a plot to attack the vote counting center by somebody coming from Virginia. So, the risks are super real. Like, this is not something where people are being alarmist about this. There are people who are heavily armed who believe what Donald Trump is saying to them. It is a lie, but they're going to potentially act on that belief. And the way that Trump can behave in these coming months will either increase or decrease the likelihood of that violence. What we saw last night massively increased the risk of that violence. And I think that's why, again, it's uncomfortable as somebody who's an academic to talk about this stuff in such stark terms. But Trump is lying. He's stoking violence. And I think people who believe in nonviolent transitions of power have to speak out very, very clearly about this. Now, when it comes to the transition on January 20th, the Constitution's clear. His term ends. And if he has been declared the loser, he will be escorted by the Secret Service out of the White House if he doesn't leave. So I'm not worried about him physically not vacating the building. I am worried about the intervening 3 months.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, Brian Klass, Associate Professor of Global Politics at University College London and author of How to Rig an Election. Clearly something that Donald Trump, he should have read, actually, because perhaps he would have been able to win. Although, again, won an extra 3 million votes, which I think a lot of people were shocked by. But perhaps that's one of the problems the Democrats have, is they shouldn't be shocked by these things. As he said, Pennsylvania likely to be the first of those big states still left to declare later on today. 20 electoral college votes that would put Joe Biden over the line. It would not, though, put Donald Trump over the line at all. He would still, if he won Pennsylvania, he needs to win Pennsylvania to win. He would still need to win 3 other states of Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, Arizona, 3 of those 4 to get over the line. It looks very, very unlikely indeed.